Putin is in a panic. His government has just exposed its own weakness and fear before the eyes of the world. Over 50 missiles and drones have penetrated deep into Russian territory overnight, showing that Moscow's once proud air defense system is practically useless. And right now, multiple sources say Putin has left Moscow in a hurry, as military planes have been seen taking off from the Kremlin area. This is happening because Ukraine is openly using British Storm Shadow missiles and Neptune missiles to attack Russia's military industry. They just destroyed a chemical plant that was producing gunpowder and rocket fuel. The chaos is spreading rapidly. Russians are realizing that Putin has abandoned them while he hides in his bunker. Some Russians are even calling on Ukraine to target the Kremlin itself as its next target. Check out this. Guys, the Kremlin isn't here. You have the wrong coordinates. You should attack the Kremlin. Go do it yourself. I don't care. Cars just stand there. Cars are just hell. Something hit here really hard. These are all our clinics. All the clinics. The pediatrics. The guy is climbing up, and a lot of people are coming out. I heard 4 bangs. People say I heard 2. People say 4. Everything in here blew up. Putin is certainly not happy that the Russian people are witnessing the Ukrainian attack and are starting to blame him. The Russian people are slowly realizing the truth about this war, and Putin is starting to get scared. The shameful escape from Moscow. But that's not even the most embarrassing part. Shortly after that Russian message, Ukraine decided to listen, and they sent a small group of drones towards Moscow. For some reason, 8 drones was too big a risk for Putin, so he left the Kremlin and ran. This news was sent by a Russian war correspondent. According to him, several Russian military aircraft left Moscow, flying towards the Ural Mountains just hours after Ukraine launched the drone. Even for Russians, this is extremely unusual. I want you to notice how Putin reacted to a couple of drones compared to how Zelensky reacted in February 2022. When Putin's troops were just outside Kyiv, Zelensky said he needed ammunition, not a ride. And when Ukrainian drones are now just outside Moscow, Putin said, "I'm leaving. This isn't for me." Widespread anger among Russians. This is why Russians are angry, and they are blaming the country's oligarchs and elites. Listen to what they say. You know what, friends? I want to talk to private gas stations, like the URTK gas station in the region. With the current fuel shortages we are experiencing in the Udmurt region, these gas stations have raised prices so high. Why are you such bad people that you decided that I'm just curious. Why did you raise prices like that? It's crazy that the country is in such a problem. You know the problems that ordinary people are facing. Why are you profiting from this, You know that people will be forced to buy fuel. You know that people will be forced to buy fuel at those prices. Shameless people. You need to be beaten, damn it. You should be lined up in front of your gas stations. You should be bent over, your pants taken off, and you should be properly beaten in front of honest people. These messages will only grow louder, and Putin knows it. He knows that if he doesn't end the war himself, Ukraine's attacks deep into Russia will never stop. Soon, Putin's pride and livelihood will be destroyed one by one, leaving Russia empty, with nowhere to refine the oil he once considered so precious. The terrible consequences of the latest attacks. In fact, last night, Ukraine launched one of its largest attacks on Russian military infrastructure. More than 50 missiles and drones, including Storm Shadow, Neptune, Flamingo, and HIMARS, strike simultaneously from Crimea all the way to Moscow. On screen, you could see a Bryansk substation go up in flames, leaving more than 130,000 Russians without electricity and water in the looming winter. A chilling reminder that the war has now truly come home. But I'm sure we all know this. Putin doesn't care about the Russian people. Russian peasants don't matter to him. What he cares about is the Russian army, especially the soldiers who are on the front lines trying to invade Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine has just attacked them, just indirectly.
Defense General Staff confirmed, що Defense Forces атакували Брянськ Chemical Plant, у який включили Storm Shadow missiles. The chemical plant is a key link in Russia's military-industrial complex. It produces gunpowder, explosives, and componenti для rocket fuel, including ammunition and rockets used by the enemy to shell Ukrainian territory. The plant will not be able to operate again.
The importance of using Storm Shadow missiles.
This was not a simple drone attack, as is often the case. Ukraine used missiles this time, specifically multiple Storm Shadows. As a result, the destructive power of the missiles was much more powerful than that of the drones. Professor Michael Clark explains why Ukraine used this missile. One of the reasons for using Storm Shadow missiles in this attack is that they are known to be very accurate. They can carry a pretty large warhead. Drones are less accurate, and if you have enough Storm Shadows aimed at a large target like a chemical plant, you have a good chance of putting that plant out of action, probably for quite a while. The use of these weapons in this attack does not put any particular pressure on Putin. Of course, it contributes to his propaganda narrative that he is fighting Europeans here, not just Ukrainians. But the pressure it puts on Putin is more material. The loss of a major plant that was supplying rocket fuel and explosive chemicals at a time when he was using them at a terrifying rate. If you look at the number of attacks that the Russians are launching against Ukraine almost every night of the week with 200, 300, up to 700, 800 drones and missiles, they are consuming a lot of explosives. And the Bryansk plant, as far as we can tell, is one of the main producers of the chemicals that go into those bombs and explosives. So it will affect the supply chain that the Russians rely on. Does it surprise Putin? No. Does he take full advantage of it in terms of propaganda? Absolutely.
According to Russian sources who visited the plant after the attack, the plant was almost wiped out.
Attack message and political response.
What is important to note here is the timing of the attack. It came just days after President Zelensky met with President Trump in Washington. During that meeting, Zelensky was not given the Tomahawk missiles he had wanted. So the attack can be seen as a clear message from Zelensky, not only to Putin, but also to the Trump administration, that Ukraine can use Western weapons and use them to strike at Russia's most painful spots. The supply chain that once supported the Russian military is now being disrupted by Ukraine. But I believe there is more to this than just a message. This attack comes just hours after President Trump publicly announced that he would not meet with Putin. The reason for the cancellation is clear. Russia is absolutely refusing to budge on its extreme demands. They want Ukraine to give up territory that Russia has not been able to take for the last 10 years. In return, what is Russia offering? They are offering a promise that they will not attack Ukraine in the future. I think we all know that Russian promises are worthless. And that is exactly why President Trump canceled the meeting. Regarding Ukraine, do you still see a chance for a ceasefire? And what is Putin asking for? Do you still see a chance for a ceasefire? And what is Putin asking for? I see. It's a brutal war. It looks like a brutal war. It doesn't really affect us. We sell them equipment, we sell NATO equipment, and NATO gives it to Ukraine, but we don't have to pay for it anymore. Biden spent $350 billion. It would never have happened if I was president. Never, in a million years. And Putin knows that too. It would never have happened. But it did happen. And I came in and I had to see if I could stop it. But it didn't affect us, because we didn't lose any soldiers there. Although when I first came in, it could have ended. It wouldn't have happened, but it could have ended in World War II. It really got out of control. So now they're shooting and killing people, and I think Putin wants it to end, and I think Zelensky wants it to end, and I think it will end.
Putin's calculations and the Russian media's stance.
Now let's look at the other front to understand better. Why is Putin still so determined to not end this bloody war, especially when his oil refineries are being destroyed one by one and the economy is on the brink of collapse? Because in his mind, Russia's wartime economy, however depleted, could outlast Western aid to Ukraine. He was betting that Ukraine's Western allies, including the United States, would tire and give up before Russia's economy completely collapsed. We can see that just by watching Russian state-controlled television and media. It is important to remember that the entire Kremlin media system takes its instructions directly from the Kremlin, sometimes even directly from Putin. So by listening to them, we can almost guess exactly what Putin is thinking. So for now, it looks like the Budapest summit is being postponed. Donald Trump says he doesn't want a wasted meeting. The U.S. president has called for a freeze on the current front lines in Ukraine. But Moscowy Komsomolets wrote today, there is not a single reason for Moscow to agree to a ceasefire. A plan of action that could be summed up as just stop where you are doesn't suit Putin. Moscow doesn't want to give the Zelensky regime any respite and has no plans to make any unilateral concessions. This approach is the complete opposite of what Donald Trump actually wanted and expected. The author accuses Donald Trump of being intellectually lazy, impatient, and unwilling to delve into complex, complicated issues. Part of the reason is that he does not want to distance himself too radically from the pro-Zelensky group in the American and European political elite. This is where Trump's new style of political courtship, which is tied to the idea of an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine, comes into play. The U.S. president has been patiently waiting for a simple way out, but has been frustrated by the people around him who have repeatedly refused to meet that desire. How Russia's calculations changed. Suddenly, America is no longer popular in the Russian press. Komsomolskaya Pravda ran this story. The U.S. is secretly sending us Ukrainian drones. Washington is helping Kyiv send drones to attack important facilities deep inside Russia. Washington should decide. Is it a peacemaker who wants to end the conflict, or a direct participant siding with the Kyiv regime? So, how do we change this calculus for Russia? Basically, we send a message to Putin and Russia, not with words, but with actions, that if Russia continues this war, the cost will be too high, and it is something that Putin cannot afford. The risk of escalation is clear, and this is the moment I want to remind everyone. Ukraine is now calling for a ceasefire. The United States is calling for a ceasefire. Western countries are calling for a ceasefire. None of them are asking Russia to withdraw its troops or to impose any other heavy conditions. They are just saying, let's stop firing, and together we will find a truly lasting peace. But that is exactly what Putin absolutely does not want to do. He just wants to continue to push this war further. So the person who is pushing the world to the brink of escalation is none other than Putin, not the West. And the only way to stop him is to show strength. When the tomahawks were put on the table, he was ready to negotiate. As soon as President Trump publicly said he would not provide tomahawks to Ukraine, Putin suddenly upped the ante and returned to what Russia had been asking for all along. That is why, if we want to end this war, we must make sure Putin feels the pain of continuing it. Conclusion of former NATO Secretary General. This is exactly the message the former NATO Secretary General is explaining. And the only way to end the war in Ukraine is to convince President Putin that he cannot win on the battlefield. I don't think we can change Putin's mind. His goal is to control Ukraine. But I think we can change Putin's calculus so that he realizes that the price he has to pay to control Ukraine is too high. And the only way to do that is to provide military assistance to Ukraine. Because what happens around the negotiating table is very much tied to what happens on the battlefield. As I record this, the NATO Secretary General is in Washington meeting with President Trump. I will continue to update you on that meeting. On the war map, the line between offense and defense is blurring. Russia's moves are still largely unknown, while Ukraine, exhausted as it is, seems to be preparing for something bigger than the world has ever seen. Reports from the front suggest a brutal winter may be coming. No one knows exactly who is controlling the battle, only that all sides are calculating in silence. Behind the diplomatic statements are secret moves, plans that have never been made public. And with each passing day, the world moves closer to a new dangerous threshold. Is this just the lull before the storm, or the beginning of an unprecedented escalation since World War II? The answer, perhaps, will soon be revealed. We will continue to monitor and update the latest developments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because sometimes just one news you missed today can be the turning point of the whole war tomorrow.